I work with a lot of buyers moving to Coral Gables who fall in love with historic homes and want to know what's the implication of buying a historic home in Coral Gables versus buying a home that hasn't been historically designated. So I have a few things to share with you today if you're thinking about buying a historic home. My name is Lindley Cherobia. I'm your Coral Gables and South Miami real estate specialist and happy to talk to you today about all things historic homes. Some of the most well-known homes in Coral Gables have been historically designated. The ones that come to mind, the first, are from George Merrick's 7 villages around the city of Coral Gables, which are fascinating and beautiful. And I did a whole video dedicated to the 7 villages, so make sure you check that out. But a lot of questions I get about historic homes are, first of all, what does the historic designation mean? Second of all, what am I allowed to do to my home if I buy a historically designated home? Number 3, what are the tax implications of buying a historically designated home? And number 4, what are just some things that I need to think about if I want to make that choice? So in order for a home to be historically designated, it has to be at least 50 years old. It was in the 1970s that the historic board or the historic division of Coral Gables was created. I will tell you that most homes in Coral Gables that are historically designated were built in the 1920s. These were the first Coral Gables homes. Most of them around 1925 and 1926, almost all of those in the old Spanish style because that was the style that was being built back then. Now I have seen homes in the 30s and 40s that have been historically designated. Usually those are in the Art Deco style, but occasionally homes that have an extra special architect or even whole areas of homes have a historic designation. What's interesting is anybody can nominate a property to be historically designated. So as long as you file the application and submit it and the historical board deems it a landmark, it can receive that designation. It doesn't have to be the owner that does that. When you own a historic home, these are the things that you need to know. In order to change the exterior of the home, your changes have to go not only before the Coral Gables Board of Architects, like any permit would go through that process, it also has to go before the Historic Preservation Board, and they are going to determine if the change you're requesting is approved or not approved. Now, it does say that the changes are to the exterior. So I do think interior modifications don't go through quite the rigorous process because they're not seen by anybody that drives by. But if you're making an exterior modification, it does have to be approved by the historic board. They want to make sure that whatever you're doing to the home keeps it in line with what was intended when the home was built. You can't change the style of a window for an entirely different style. You can't do an addition that is in a dramatically different architectural style than the original home. So they want to make sure that anything that's done is done with integrity to the style and the time and the feeling that the house had originally. There is also a tax benefit, and I'm going to read this so I don't screw it up. The city obviously encourages historic preservation, and you do qualify, you're eligible for certain federal tax incentives. So essentially, if you make an improvement to a historic home, you could be provided a 10-year freeze on the value of the improvements that are made to local historic properties. So they might give you a little bit of a tax break in terms of the work that you do to restore the home. And I think what this does is it incentivizes people to buy historic homes that need the work and do the work without being hit with a huge tax for doing it. They want people to buy these homes. They want people to invest in these homes and make them beautiful again if they need that. Oftentimes historic homes have tiny closets or, spaces that aren't as in line with what people want today. So these tax incentives give buyers the opportunity to expand houses that might need it or improve them in ways that are just more proper with today's buyers' wants. So does buying a historically designated home delay the process? Well, it can. Because not only do you have to go before the main board that reviews changes and permits done to homes in Coral Gables, but you have to go before that second board. They do scrutinize applications. They do want to make sure that what's being done stays in line with how the home was originally intended, and that does take time. Here's the thing. Historical homes are beautiful, and I do think that the people that want to buy a historically designated home are usually people that are stewards of the history. It's not the buyer that wants to to reap the benefits of the appreciation that might come from the home. No. It's somebody that appreciates the history, that wants to be the right caretaker for the home. It's a different kind of buyer. And there's something magical about these historical properties. They're so special and they are protected, and there's not that many of them. But the right buyer is not usually the guy that's looking to make a buck. It's the buyer that cares about the history, that cares about why it was designated and what makes it special, and wants to keep it that way for many years to come. I think that a lot of historically designated properties, they sometimes cause debate among people that want change, want development, and people that don't, that want to preserve the history and keep the history. And Coral Gables is an old established city that values the historic properties that are inside of the city limits. There's so much beauty in it, and they're so special. If you're thinking about buying a historically designated home, you must do your research. You must understand what the city requires, but you probably have an appreciation for what all of that comes with. I love the historical homes in Coral Gables. I'd love to help navigate that with you if that's what you think you want to do. I'm Lindley Chirobia, your Coral Gables real estate agent, here to talk about all things history in the city. Talk to you soon.